Hello, my name is Fraser Simons. This is my channel, Springboard Thought. Today I'm going to be talking about Borges, specifically his Ficciones from the Everyman Edition library, which is really interesting actually. It has a really comprehensive introduction, somewhat has spoilers in it, so I read it last. As most of these editions do, it seems to assume that the person buying the book has already read the book, or just doesn't mind spoilers, I guess, but I'm not one of those people. It also has the chronology of his life and career and his publications, which is very interesting. And then the meat of it is the book itself. This is my first Borges book that I have ever consumed. I thought it was really interesting. I just wanted to sort of put down what was interesting about reading it. I'm not going to be saying anything completely new about Borges. He has been analyzed. Many people have spoken about his works and why they enjoyed it, what they liked about it, and critiqued it many ways. I just wanted to give a few reasons as to why I liked reading it and will continue to read more of his works. So this book is, for one, very novel, I thought, even though it is quite old. It feels very erudite and intelligent and cerebral in an interesting way. I found the prose to be a lot more accessible than I expected them to be. I thought it'd be like a lot more opaque or obtuse, but even when he does use terminology that is antiquated, it is so intuitive what he is trying to say with the sentence that it doesn't matter. He's not one of those authors that is on like thesaurus.com and just putting in things for whatever sake to feel like smart or appeal to a certain demographic. And the core sort of like concepts of his work, I think you would be able to grasp no matter what. For instance, some of them are very complex, but the work builds on itself as it goes. And so it feels more like bite-sized increments of specific concepts that he's trying to get across. It doesn't seem like he particularly subscribes to one specific ideology. He's sort of interrogating a bunch of different things, which makes it feel open-minded, curious, interesting. It's instilled with like a kind of perspicacity, and like he feels very like generally very earnest, I would say, which is very compelling. Again, it's like the quality I've talked about in other videos where you can kind of just tell that the author is having fun writing. I don't know how to get across that aspect of it. It's just something you sort of feel as you're consuming something. And it's a lot of fun as a reader to consume something like that. For instance, early on in the book, he is talking about a encyclopedia that seems like it could potentially exist as the story goes on. And because you're reading a book that says Ficciones, you would expect it to not be correct, but he's so good at assuming a particular point of view, and it's framed usually as him writing a letter to a particular individual, so there's like an automatic intimacy that occurs between you and he, and it just feels like companionable and interesting and believable, whereas most fiction these days, the writer is working to not show the buttressing that is happening in fiction. Like they're trying to give you a lot of like verisimilitude, or they're trying to give you a lot of universal human moving moments that would make you connect with the character, and therefore make the falsity, the actual fictions or the conceit that they're trying to embed in the story, something that you can suspend your disbelief around. Yet the immediate framing for Borges, because he is writing to somebody and sort of like letting you in on this secret, maybe, even when it becomes very fictionalized, it still feels more real than some commercial fiction and some literary fiction and whatnot. So stylistically, it is very interesting to me. And again, the way that it sort of nests each concept as you're going in is also very smart and feels like a sort of respect that he has for the reader. Even as the introduction actually said astutely, was if you had consumed this as not in these small short story-esque type parts that make up the novel, and it had just been a 500-page novel by Borges, I think you would just be it would be very hard to track. It would be very difficult to consume and antithetical to the concepts that he's trying to explore anyway. But it would just be one of those novels like Finnegan's Wake or something like that. I think it would be where you would just be like, I'm going to read this before I die, instead of like a small everyman edition that's just easy, I would say, to consume. I mean, his mastery of the language, and I guess we have a lot to thank for the various translators in this, is so well practiced that you can't really consume this book quite quickly, or if you did, you'd just be doing what I would call overdriving your eyes, in the same concept of when you're driving your car really fast and you're going so fast that the headlights can't keep up, and so you wouldn't be able to anticipate in time what was happening. We use that term here for people who drive so fast that they hit a deer, for instance, right? It's over before it's happened. They can't do anything about it because they're going too fast. In the same way that if you tried to read Borges very fast, you're missing the meat of it. You're probably like hitting some words and off on a tangent in your own mind, or just getting to the end of the paragraph and not actually digesting the meat of what he's actually said. But the sentence by sentence structure is so interesting, and his diction is so interesting, and the overall voice is so compelling that typically you wouldn't be doing that anyway. For me, when I was reading him, it was almost like I was speaking it out loud with my mouth closed, basically. Like I could feel sort of the tip of my tongue moving as I was going over the sentences, so it was quite fun. And so it forces you to go at his own pace, which makes it always a satisfying experience when he finally does sort of allow the pin to drop for each concept that he's doing. For instance, there's one story where he is talking about a review of a book, and it was so convincing, even though I knew it was fiction, that I sort of let myself believe that this was a real book, and I went on Goodreads and tried to find it. And of course, somebody did publish a book in the name of it, but it was an homage to this completely fictional review. And in the review, really it tells you everything that you would need to know about the book anyway, without having consumed it, which is a feat in and of self. But he explains it in such a way that you really do want to consume that book and hope and wish fervently that it is real. Again, a feat. And then later on, you get some of that payoff in a tangential way that you never thought you would get, because another story is about a book as a different concept than what we think of it now, written in such a way that I can't really go into spoilers on it, but you know, if you've read the book, what I'm talking about, where the book is designed as something other than a book, basically, or the consumption of the book becomes something other than what we usually associate with it. And so, yeah, I just thought it was very brilliant, and produces a lot of thoughts. It's very exciting. It's eminently rereadable. The only thing that I thought was a little bit difficult of the text is when he is referencing clearly previous works that are quite old and I'm not aware of, but he generally provides enough context that it doesn't matter so much. All of his work seems to be very astutely in conversation with what has come before it. And his work is, you know, slightly old and classical. He's dead now. And so obviously the things that he was mentioning, and plus some of them are esoteric or in different languages, and maybe not even translated to English for some of them. So it very much seemed like it was in conversation with those things of the past. And if you don't have that full context, it feels like maybe you're sort of like laughing along with a friend that's telling you a joke, but you don't understand the reference, but it's still funny, you know, like, if that makes any sense. You get enough context that you understand that it's funny, but you don't understand the subversion or the conversation or the punching up, punching down, or whatever of it, right? So that's the only thing about it, and that's why I think it's rereadable. Maybe if you did find these works and consume them, and then consume this again, you'd be getting both aspects. You'd get the rereading quality of the actual fiction, and then you'd also be getting the additional context of whatever previous stuff you've consumed. Anyway, obviously, I love the book. I gave it 5 stars. I'll definitely consume it again at some point, and I'll be getting more of his works in the future to talk about, hopefully somewhat intelligently. It's very interesting. If you've read Borges, I'd love to know where you would go from here, what work you would dive into, because he has a collection of nonfiction, collection of fiction, Aleph and other stories, and perhaps one more, I'm not quite sure. So where would you go from here? Thoughts, questions, feelings, queries about Ficciones, let me know. We'll have a chat about it. Otherwise, I will see you next video. Bye.